to another episode of the Crazy Stupid Marketing Show, the show where we talk about all the crazy stupid stuff that people do in marketing, how you can not do that. Because I don't think this is what we're all here for, right? A whole bunch of things. Let's define crazy stupid quickly for anyone who is first timer watching the show. So on the Crazy Stupid Marketing Show, we define crazy as things that you do over and over again, expecting different results, and stupid being the things that you do just because someone told you that you should, but you don't have a good reason that you're doing them, and you don't have any results that prove that they work. So these are the types of things that we are hoping to discover through our conversations on the Crazy Stupid Marketing Show, so that you don't have to do those things anymore and instead can do smart, meaningful, awesome stuff that actually shows our companies that marketing actually matters. Shall we do that? Because I feel like we haven't been doing that great for a while. Let's get that. While this might look like a conversation for two people, it is in fact a conversation for all of us. So we already have Gary tuning in. Hey, Gary. We have Leslie too. Thanks, you guys, for joining in. This is an opportunity for all of us to get into the conversation on our topic for today, which is social first brands. And you might even be thinking, like, what does that even mean? Does social mean social media? There's going to be a whole bunch of questions that come up today. So if you have any questions, or you happen to have insights, perspectives, experiences that are relevant to the conversation, please put those in the chat. We would be super, super happy to incorporate them into the conversation. Meryl, great to see you, my friend. Yes, Crazy Stupid Marketing Wednesdays. Always come and hang out on Wednesdays with us. All right. So we're going to have this conversation about social first brands, and I'm not going to introduce to you what that is. I'm going to pass that over to Tom, who is joining us and partner in the conversation today. Tom, if you want to share a little bit about yourself first, that'd be great. And then tell us a little bit about what it means to be a social first brand.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I took some great notes. So don't be crazy or stupid, you're saying? Okay.
Yeah.
Already blown my mind.
I mean, you can, and we probably have all been that at some point in time. The goal is just to not continue being that once we have seen that that's what we're doing.
I know. I will honestly pass that along. Those good notes for some clients I can think of for some companies. But yeah, no, absolutely. So I'm out there, social first brands. Been social for a very long time. I run now in a small agency out in Denver, Colorado, where we really specialize in helping brands think social first. And so what that really means is, I'd say historically, social media gets kind of grafted onto a marketing program. Maybe social gets invited at the very last minute of the go-to-market. But really, social first, as the name implies, is starting to make that the tip of the spear when it comes to your marketing efforts. And not just marketing, it can be the entire organization when done extremely well. So that means product, right? It's kind of a company culture in itself. So really leading with all things social. And the reason why we do that is because that's where our customers spend their lives at, right? So instead of maybe questioning ourselves in a boardroom and trying to brainstorm our next genius campaign, or maybe a crazy stupid campaign, we are instead having the ear close to the ground. What does our audience care about? How can we make their lives better through our products, through our content, and how do we get people talking about us in a way that it kind of finds a mutual ground? So it really is, it's not rocket science. It's all predicated on serving the customer, and we use social media as a tip of that, simply because that's where our customers are spending their, majority of their days these days.
Yeah. Well, and I think I'd love to start this conversation off with the difference between being social on social media and being on social media. Because I think a lot of people have assumed that it's social because we call it social media. But I think there's more to this. You talked about being with your customers and all these different types of things. So what is this? I feel like you're talking about a different level of social. So how do we broaden our perspective on what it is to be social, not just to post on social media?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I think of lowercase social first and capital, uppercase social first. And so lowercase, that first part of it, it's kind of a no-brainer stuff, right? I think all of us have the same first thought when we create any sort of marketing channel, whether it's social media, email, to your website, it's all really predicated on what you want to say, right? It's a broadcast. I have this great product, I have this great service. I think I'm the best with this. I think my company makes the best experience in this. We have to go tell the masses, right? And so we grab our microphones and we head to social media and we start, spewing our marketing message. And that's just the way best practices in the industry have taught us to behave for forever, right? And so I think that's like the first step of it is like, yes, you open channels up and you start posting on there without necessarily thinking about like the user on the other side of it. 9 times out of 10, actually probably way more than that, if they're not on there to hear from a company, they don't want to be sold to, be marketed to, right? So now the game is afoot, if you will, and the challenge becomes how do we take what we want to talk about and put it into something that people actually want to hear about, like to add value to their lives, right? And so that's where we get into like social, like first like uppercase, right, capitalized. And to me, that's again that actually transcends social media. So now really we're talking just like we would social like interactions, right? And so that again, if you're a company or a brand, or if you run a small business or solo operator, even the principle is the same. And that's where you start to think, how can I infuse this ethos into our entire operation, right? So instead of just going on there and posting on social media, it becomes what's happening in the world right now where I can find kind of mutual ground subjects to talk about. So maybe it impacts the way I market my offerings, right? Or maybe our product can now be an interesting collaboration with a brand that's in the zeitgeist, right? So you start to think way beyond social media. Social media, in this case, uppercase, social first, it becomes a means to an end simply. It is the channel to use for sure, but it isn't necessarily how you build the practice. And that really should be your entire kind of go-to-market engine. How you think about even speaking to your customers should start with that social lens. Just like, we would kind of treat people in a real life scenario versus necessarily having our marketing caps on.
Yeah. Oh, this is making me think like very much like more ecosystem-y than like broadcast, as you mentioned, right? And so like what's the role? Like I've heard people use phrases like brand communities and things like that. What is the role of the ecosystem, the brand community, and like looking at, like, yes, customers, but also partners, collaborators, investors, vendors, like everything else that's happening as part of the brand ecosystem? Do they get to participate in this socialness as well?
They should, done at its best, absolutely. I think of like a really good social first brand, or just again a brand. You can even drop that term for today's discussion and just think social first, right? As anybody in business, even if you're a solo operator, this is still relevant. But absolutely, yes, that larger ecosystem that you mentioned, like that's a great way to start to think about it, right? Because now it becomes more that kind of cultural aspect where you start to infuse this throughout the company. And so the very best times you see like social first practitioners or companies, it's because leadership understands it. Even if they don't get social media, that's totally fine. They understand the power of this and how you have to kind of turn over some of this to other players, other stakeholders internally, and then ultimately kind of pushing for that, what the customer wants and needs, right? So I do think that like it becomes a massive ecosystem, and it starts to really just kind of change the way you run a business, to be honest. But again, you have to lean into there's a lot of trust. There's a little bit of a leap of faith because again, historically, people have viewed social media as like, oh, it's what the intern uses. That's just where the kids go play. So if you start to kind of think of it really more as a transformational engine of a business, the lights start to kind of come on and dots connect. And really, I think it just broadens the scope of like who has a seat at the table there.
Mm-hmm. Well, and this question is coming up for me again, and I'm pretty sure I asked it when we were like both on the digital download. So apologies, but these viewers weren't necessarily watching us on the digital download because you brought up the word culture. And I feel like when we use the word culture, it sounds like a big thing and a like big transformation. And is there like a specific type of culture that is like more ready for becoming a social first brand than others? And if we're find ourselves in the other category, are there some like little things that we could start to like test or introduce to help us, like, because the transformation is big, right? We can't just jump to the end of it. So who's a good fit for this first, and then how do we become a good fit for it if we perhaps are not today?
Yeah, really good question. And I'd say the first part of that is like absolutely consumer brands. It's more inherent in this than B2Bs. And not that you can't be social first in B2B, but if we were to say like who has a better starting point from there, absolutely consumer brands. It's just you get that mass usage of social media, so it really gives you more, I'd say, optionality, more potential, kind of inherently built into that when you're dealing with consumers, right? So I think that is kind of improving. There's an interesting study from Deloitte, actually, the um, consulting agency, and they really kind of published this fact that's like social first brands, consumer brands that is, are 8 times more likely to exceed their revenue goals by 25% or more by kind of being a social first approach. So we kind of know that it's inherently built in. I would absolutely say that. And we work with both B2B and B2C companies, and we see this firsthand. So I think that's the first part of it is like, who are you ultimately talking to? If your customer is that more traditional B2B buyer, that this stuff can't work, but I think it's just a little bit not as easy of a cultural fit. Second piece of that, though, I'd say it's like when you have companies culturally that are led by, you don't have to be a social media social first thinker, but you are really just consumer centric and not somebody who just uses that term. Everybody says they're consumer centric, but actually walks the talk. And that's very rare, to be honest. Most people just give that lip service. So finding people that genuinely care and genuinely are obsessed with that customer and put them first in everything, those companies succeed 9 times out of 10 because that leader, that kind of culture gets set at the top, is a much easier to kind of trickle down to the rest of the operation.
Yeah. Oh, okay. And I want to tie in something Gary is sharing here in the comments. Over the last 10 years, we've built social capital by turning the norms in how we do business on its head. We did and do this by delivering the unexpected rather than the expected across all areas of our business. And I had a really cool conversation with Gary a couple weeks ago about what they've done in like the construction business, just being like, these don't make sense. We're going to not work with those norms. And so what is the exact question I want to ask here? Something in the arena of like, do you have to have something that's like wholly unique, something fully unexpected, in order to be successful as a social first brand? Or can we just like kind of do, I mean, it's obviously not business as usual, but kind of just like do our business we would do, and like layer on this concept of social. I like how Gary said social capital, right? Like you're building up that social capital as part of your like business efforts. But does that necessarily have to come along with a like totally unique brand narrative that nobody's ever heard before?
Sure. Yeah, no, I love that question. And I think it's a great one. The unexpected plays extremely well on social media specifically. So 100%, like I always tell this to clients too, it's like, you can't just take like, the business as usual marketing message, say, hey, we're the XYZ, gadget is here, the future of the XYZ industry has arrived, right? We get so used to seeing just traditional marketing messages on social and like, just don't post that because it's not going to work, right? It's not even worth your time. So absolutely you have to find a way in there to either be unexpected, to stand out, right? And whether that translates to the rest of the business or the product itself, that's much harder to do, right? The product itself, the experience might not be as, unexpected, but if you can translate it and put that into social, right? Absolutely. It's a fantastic use of that, and earning that social capital comes along with that. I think we see that play out every single day, right? That's really how you win today on social specifically. If you look like everybody else, you sound like everybody else, you're gonna get the same results as the masses, which is, crickets to people ignoring you.
Right. And so how can we, because I mean, like this is a bigger brand play, right? Like this is not necessarily like, hey, I send out this email and all of a sudden I have 1 million people who've bought my thing. So what are some of the meaningful metrics that you see associated with being social first that can help, again, to show people it's not about just like posting a thing, but it's more about like the engagement or the conversation? Or what are some of the like KPIs that you guys use that help indicate whether or not you're actually a social first brand or not?
Love this question because we're going through this right now with a number of clients. And I think it's changing. That my thinking on it has definitely changed the past few years. So it used to be like your traditional stuff, like you're looking for like reach and engagements, right? Those things still matter. Don't get me wrong, but if you focus on that as your KPI of like success, like, oh, we reached 50% more people last year in the report. Our engagements are going up. Fantastic, right? That's one thing you can pay attention to. But you're looking at a small microcosm, like sliver of that consumer universe that you're playing in, right? You're really looking at your own content, which is again like you're talking about your own message, your own broadcast. And some stats I've seen out there, only about 4% of like brand conversations happen like on brand-owned channels. 95% plus are happening on consumer channels, UGC, or in Reddit forums, right? It could be all over the place. And so I think that's the thing, is we get so obsessed with our content constantly that we're missing this like 96%. And so to me, I write about this in the book a bunch too, which is the goal of a social first brand is to get people talking. And so sometimes it's going to be comments on your post. So sure, track that, right? Are we seeing comments growing over time? Are we having more conversations with people? But also, a big one for us that the KPIs look at are mentions, right? You want to get people talking about us, so let's track that. Are they posting about us in their own channels? Are we seeing more Reddit, forums pop up talking about us? Are we seeing, more Instagram stories tagging us? So really looking at what the consumer is doing. So somewhat more of those like outbound, or sorry, I guess it'd be inbound in that case, kind of metrics of what people are doing versus us necessarily, our output. What is the impact of that? So that's really the big one for us, right? Is like, are we seeing those grow over time? If we're not seeing more comments about our brand, more mentions, more people sharing about us, then this isn't truly social first, right? Because it's all about getting other people talking and not just how much can we talk.
Right. And so what my mind says then, like content's got to play a role in that, right? So like what is the role then that content plays in starting that conversation, giving people, like I often talk about content as if it's like the footnotes of your book, right? Like here's all of the reference points, but one on its own doesn't really like stand alone. It works as a cohesive set. So what is the role? Because I don't think we're in the state where people aren't just going to be like, okay, well, I just will create no content and what will people talk about then? So what's the role of content in this whole system?
Yeah. So again, I have evolving thoughts on this. And if you ask me tomorrow, I'll probably different, even more extreme thoughts than today. But I do think that content in itself is decreasing in value every passing day. It's just becoming more and more commodified, right? So not only like, even leave AI on the side for a second, just take a fact here that as the world grows in population and more people get internet access, there's going to be more humans on platforms and more content and noise than ever. The creator economy is blown up. We see very talented people creating way better content than brands and companies ever can, right? Every single day. And then you introduce AI and AI slop and all that stuff. And it's never been noisier. We've never seen content be quite as commodified as it is today, when a kindergartner with an AI prompt is now, building a following on social. So I'd say, like if that's your moat you're planning to win on, it still can be done, right? But your competition is massively intense, and now you have to have better content, whatever that means in your world, than every other player there. So yes, if you think you can be the top 2% player in the content world, go for it. Like you have to go all in on that, right? And say we're going to win by just creating best in class, and not just like best in class subjectively, but objectively go win that, right? And that takes a massive amount of investment and time to build that engine. With that being said, though, I think like content's shifting too. We're starting to see brands kind of realize like, hey, we were told for years by social media gurus we had to post 5 times a day and just post everywhere and just broadcast to diminishing returns. And so I think now we're seeing as consumers got really annoyed at that. Then we saw just more competition and noise online than ever. It just wasn't cutting through like it used to. Organic reach started to drop and platforms paid to play. So all of this perfect storm of content just not being as impactful. So I think companies started to realize, hey, like we could turn to, again, some of these like creators who are way better at this than we are as a company or a brand, who they do this inherently, they're really talented at it. Let's give them the platform to talk about us, right? So maybe that means downshifting your own content, but you go through somebody else's, their skill sets of it, their audiences, right? My biggest like advice on content is how can you get your audience to talk to their audience, right? So the content maybe shifts from like what the brand is putting out there to what your audience is creating. And so I think like it's still really important. Obviously, you need that turned on. I know at the end of the day, we all have bosses to report to, and they want to see what their content do last month. So that's not going away. I understand the pressures for that, So I do think we're starting to see people shift out of this, like, okay, actually, what's the point of us posting 100 times a month if it's not working? What if we went down to 50 posts a month, and now we shifted even 25 posts into a creator or somebody else to talk about us? Let's measure that, right? Which one did better? And most of the experience we run with clients is we see the latter is more effective, right? Because you're starting to get more diversity of voices, and you're leaning on content in a way that's just a little bit more likely to be primed for success than just trying to continue to broadcast.
Right. All right. So you touched on experiments there. So let's stay there for a minute, because again, if we are in this stage today where maybe we wouldn't consider ourselves a social first brand, but we're listening to this and all of this makes sense. And so we'd like to try some things. You gave us an example of an experiment there. Are there any other example, maybe like small time frame, small budget type of experiences that or experiments that we can do to like start dipping our toes into being social first?
Yeah, I love that. So I think a great kind of just like low cost, easy starting point in some of this is to kind of piggyback on what I said a minute ago, but like cut your production in half. Whatever you have planned for next month, next week, right? Cut that in half in volume wise, and kind of start to think through one of two pathways. One is, how do we increase the quality of these 50%? So now we're doubling up the quality, cutting back on the volume of it, right? How does that compare, right? Well, maybe say, again, last month we ran 100 posts, and it was just feed the machine thinking, right? We had to feed the machine, feed the machine, feed the machine. This month we're going to say, hey, you know what? Let's take the pressure off of just having to produce content for the sake of producing content, and maybe take that extra time we save from that to spend an extra hour a day listening to what's happening online. Is it a micro trend that's super relevant to our product or our category, right? Is there something in our audience who tagged us and we've never taken the time, so we're too busy producing content, to stop and listen to them and say, like, how does this connect back? What do they want from this, right? So taking those little time savings from the listening side of things, where you're seeing on social, where your customers are begging you for it, but you just never stop to smell the flowers a little bit, I think is a really, really great one that any brand, any size company in the world can do starting tomorrow.
Yeah, it's actually funny because few articles ago I had like encouraged people to do that, like all of that like telling that you're doing. What if you didn't do all of that and you did save some of that time for listening instead? There might be an opportunity to learn something that could, worst case scenario, inform what you're saying so that it's more meaningful to your customers. I think this is like ongoing battle. I don't think it's just a marketing battle. I think it's just like the way humanity has gotten to on our like efficiency, effectiveness machines, where we're just like fill all the time with doing stuff. And if we fill all of our time with doing stuff, then we will reach the goal. But not if we're not doing meaningful stuff. We can do a lot of, humans are very good at doing stuff. But then there's a lot of times where we're sitting there and we're looking, and I'll bring this back to marketing now, is just like, we're looking at our results and we're like, how come none of this is doing anything? And then we get all of this, like, you just need to do more of it. That's the answer. You're not doing enough. Do more of those things. And then you'll get, so we send more emails, and we are posting on more channels, and we post more times, and we post like the exact same thing over and over because we actually don't have that many ideas for content. And like now we've just like filled any like learning time with doing. And I mean, when being social, like even again, take it out of marketing and just take it into like your group of friends. Right? When you're being social, there is space. Right? Maybe you stop to take a drink of your drink, or maybe you stop to take a bite of your dinner. And there's also a back and forth, right? So you say a thing and it triggers me to think a thing, and then I say a thing. But if we're not actually being social, what you say could trigger a thing, and I could also just keep it to myself. Right? So there's like all of this back and forth, and a lot of it is only enabled in giving it room to breathe, giving it space. So I'd just love to hear your thoughts on the concept of like maybe just time management as a whole, and what we're doing from a marketing point of view if we want to be social first.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things that's like so simple and obvious, but not always easy. And again, that's just it's kind of a business practice, I'd say at large, which I've been in companies before, so I understand this and I see it playing all the time with companies we work with today, but it's just old thinking, right? That kind of gets in the way sometimes. And so again, we fall back into, well, our measurement system or reward system is based on our output, right? That's way bigger than marketing. That's like the industrial corporate factory model, right? So it impacts, if somebody's in accounting, right? They have the same pain points, right? We all feel it, right? And so we're no different in marketing. It's just it's a symptom of larger just business practices, right? And so it's a lot easier to sit around pushing buttons and to tell your boss at the end of the month, well, look what I did. I sent out 100 posts, right? Awesome, right? It makes you feel good. You got to sit there and push buttons all day long. And we get so busy trying to kind of cut up, we trying to hit these arbitrary metrics that we set for ourselves of how we measure productivity, that we kind of don't ever stop to do the obvious, which is like, it's not as glamorous, right? It's a lot harder to show your value. If you said, well, I only posted 20 times this month, but with that extra time, what I did was I deeply listened. I spent all those hours just listening to what people were talking about, going through and analyzing our past 2 years worth of mentions and tags, right? And I started to see some really interesting overlaps. Or I was a deep dive into like the TikTok rabbit hole. That led me to Reddit. I read all about this stuff and these related products. Or, hey, you know what? We have a POV on this topic that's super close to our company stands for. What if we start talking about these things? This is stuff that people just don't take the time to do. It's not hard. It's not rocket science. We just get so caught up with old ways of thinking and kind of playing business. We just kind of forget again, like if we truly, truly care about what the customer wants, what the customer is saying, we'd put our time into it. So that starts with, how do we reevaluate what value looks like? Instead of maybe tracking against 100 posts a month, we now say, hey, what did we learn this month, right? One big insight. I'd rather take one massive unlock or just something gets you closer to your customer than just 100 posts that just fed a content machine that nobody really cares about. You don't know your customer any better than you did last month. So what's the point of it, right? So I think it just starts with that conversation of how do you allocate your time and resources into maybe more impactful ways, even to feel like you're taking 2 steps back to go 1 step forward. That's ultimately, right, that's going to get you further ahead in the long game.
Yeah, and I don't know, I'm going to say something bold, and I don't believe in absolutes, so there's no way that this is always the case. But when I think about the relationship between like measuring activity, it's like, I feel like people get busy measuring activity because they don't have results. And if you happened to be getting results, but you weren't even really sure why that was happening, right? You've got like people going out and being social, starting conversations, and then like you can see it on the balance sheet, then like we don't really ask too many questions. Like in sales, when you have a sales rep who's just like selling the crap out of stuff, you're not really like, what are all the things you're doing and how many calls are you making and like how many of those people and what amount of research did you do to like feed that, right? Like we let that guy like go do his thing and we just like are like, yeah, good job us for hiring that guy. I feel like when we're not seeing the results is when we start to get like really, like we really dig into these like productivity activity metrics and we try to maybe create connection points between them that don't necessarily exist. And then also we get caught up in that, okay, so today we're doing 100 posts a month and that's not getting us the traction we want. So we need to do 200 posts a month and then that will do it. Like, I don't know. I learned like in math very early on that zero, like anything times zero is still zero. Like 100 times zero is zero and 200 times zero is zero. Doesn't, except it takes a heck of a lot more time to do 200 of a thing, even if you're using AI to like have a multiplier of zero. So I don't know. But I do think it's braver and maybe less popular to say like, whoa, right now we have a multiplier of zero. We need to change that multiplier, right? Like all these things it's multiplying don't matter until we can change the multiplier. So let's like just roll there and figure out what we can do over here first.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's kind of funny. It's like, I rarely work with startups anymore for this reason. But it's like people are so, and again, the marketing, advertising, industrial complex did an amazing job of brainwashing into this. So I understand the power of it and the pressure we all feel to be everywhere, to post everything, to share everything. Like not only as brands, individuals today, we all have an opinion about everything. we just kind of lost the art of just being able to like chill, listen, think before we talk, right? So a lot of this stuff is just like being a good human 101 is my deepest theory on social first. Conversation for a different day. But I think with some of these practices, right, where it's like all sometimes look at a company's social and just tell them like, you guys just don't post for 6 months. Take those 6 months you're going to put the time and effort to do that because it's not working. I can look at your guys' last couple of years of history here and put that time into just like studying your customer. What do they want from you? Like, this is not worth your time, and they're not going to notice, right? You stop posting. And then this is again, like, there's way more companies out there than I like to admit that just like, if they stop posting today, nobody's going to bat an eye. Nobody ever cared, right? And so I think we felt pressure to this. I have to be on social, I have to be posting, I have to do this. But again, we're just running around chasing arbitrary metrics, feeding the pressure that we feel from this larger marketing best practices that all these platforms obviously profit off of. They want us to be doing this. So we're just not taking the time and really being more thoughtful about it. And again, I would rather see a company go quiet for 3, 4, 5, 6 months and do something new, come out with actually something to move the needle versus just banging their head against the wall, posting the same stuff over and over and over again that just isn't leading to any business impact, and it's just not getting anybody talking about it.
Yeah. I mean, so I'm an athlete. I think we talked about this when we had our coffee chat. And like, I think about a lot of things in terms of what works in sport and versus how we're not using that same logic in business. And like, to me, the platforms, they're there to play their game. Like, they have their algorithm game. Their algorithms are set up to keep people on the platform so they do what the platform wants them to do, not what I want them to do from a business point of view. And so that's their game. I can try and play their game, but they're going to win their game. They're like the casino. Right? Like, the casino knows the odds. They can change the rules if they want, and that's their game. So I can try and chase their game, or I can figure out what game do I want to play, and like, is it possible to play this game on this field? Right? Most of the social media fields are like pretty. Like, be a good human. I mean, that's not even a rule, unfortunately, on social media. But like, the rules are pretty loose, right? Like, on how you can go and play there. But unless you know how you want to go and play, like how I would go and play basketball is very different than if someone would go and play hockey, right? And if you're like, here's how you do social media, but it's the rules of how to play basketball and you're there to play hockey, like, it doesn't make sense. And I really think when we are talking about social first brands, that there is this like identity component, right? Like, who are we? What are we here to do? What do our customers need, right? Forget all the other customers that are consuming everything else. That's not our customers are consuming our stuff and other people's stuff, but like, that's not our business. And so like, how do you see this being like incorporated back? I mean, we talked about culture kind of, but like incorporating back into like the identity of a business, and how much does that identity then kind of dictate what it looks like for you to be social first versus what someone else might look like being social first?
Wow, I think you're in my brain this week, Tracy. This is an awesome question. So it's kind of funny. I was reflecting on, long story short, recently started working as a personal trainer, speaking of sports and athletic stuff. I was like, you know what, like, I'm trying this on my own for a long time. I want to, like, what's next, right? What's the next level? And he's really awesome. He's very professional, knows all this stuff. But the biggest thing I've learned from this process in the past few months, which applies to brands and social media, was the identity of like how you actually transform, right? How do you make those big changes, right? And so in my case, okay, I was like, I'd sort of been to schools, right? I wanted to hit, so I brought in the professional, the expert. But there's certain like things along the way that absolutely I've never done. It's really helpful, but really it's core stuff that we can learn as a brand or a business owner too. And it starts with the identity piece, right? If you don't believe that you're capable of doing this, or you don't believe that this methodology is going to work for you, and you don't truly like incorporate that into how you think and how you see yourself in the world, whether that's a brand or an individual, that self-identity piece, it's not going to work. It's going to break before you ever get going, right? And so to me, that identity piece is core to it. You have to have that as like step one. The second piece of that, which I started to think about, was the parallel between these two worlds, is like working with a really good business coach. Same thing, right? You start with the identity usually, and then you move into like systems, right? So system is that second piece, right? You have the identity, it's the beliefs. Like, And I see a lot of companies try to bypass the identity piece. And I'm starting to think about how can we, in my company now, start to help on that a little bit more before we get going to the project. Because if you just want to rush and get results, again, you're just thinking about revenue, you're thinking about cash grabs. You're not starting from true social first mentality. And then you can put in the systems once you truly kind of get that into your core operating model and your culture. What do those systems look like here to sustain this? And then lastly is accountability, right? So same thing, working like a trainer. One of the best aspects is like, I don't have to like make up my mind, I'm going to work out today, kind of tired, right? Nope. He's coming at 10 a.m. I'm working out at 10 a.m., right? It's the same thing with social first is we have to have accountability to hold us back to these things. Versus, you know, the next quarterly results came out, the CEO freaks out, oh, we're down 10%, right? Throw out that plan, let's go back to, you know, this. We can just waver so quickly in business. And social first really is a long-term, it's a forever strategy, right? It's playing the long game. It's an infinite game, as Simon Sinek would say. And so if you're any infinite game you're playing, if you don't do that with the identity, really at the core of it, it's going to break down. It's just not simply sustainable. And so I think of like that, it goes back to the culture, it goes back to leadership, it goes back to having really a trusted social media team that can kind of represent this day in and day out.
Yeah. I love what you said too about this. Like, there is a choice here also in terms of like choosing to believe this is going to work. And I always think there's actually an identity component to that, even, right? Because one of the things that I say about marketing is that marketing can't actually sell you something. Like, marketing isn't there holding a gun to your head being like, buy this pair of sneakers. Right? Like, you can't. That's not how it works. Marketing communicates to people that there are solutions to problems. But again, the example I always use is like, I could stand all day until I'm blue in the face trying to convince someone to buy a refrigerator. But if they already have a refrigerator that works perfectly well, that is not, the effort is wasted. However, if all of a sudden someone's fridge breaks and then they're like, oh my gosh, I need a fridge. Who do I know who sells fridges? Oh, I know this person sells fridges. That's the point, right? Like, I don't control their need. They have a need. I create a solution to a problem. And so when I'm trying on marketing methodologies, right? Social first, or one of the thousands of other marketing methodologies that people have coined, right? Like, I get to do that with my need, right? With my identity, and say like, okay, well, that sounds like a refrigerator and I don't need a refrigerator, so I'm going to let that one go. Oh, but this, like, Tracy and Tom are talking about it, and all of this seems to make sense to me. Okay, if all of this seems to make sense to you, then you are like predisposed for that to work for you, because now it's a lot easier for you to believe that that's possible because it's in alignment with you. The activities, the ways of thinking, those already have a natural alignment. And so choosing to do activities then that are in alignment with that, theoretically, not all of them, but like most of the activities will feel easy to do. They will make sense to you. They won't be like, I've had clients before will be like, my coach told me to this. And I'm like, I feel like you don't really want to do that. And they're like, yeah, I don't really get what it's supposed to do for me. But I'm like, I've got accountability, right? Like, I'm a very diligent student, so I'm going to go do it. And you're like, you already don't believe it's going to work. So you're going to bring this energy of, I'm not sure this is going to work, into your efforts. And then that reflects the results of your efforts. And so if you're not willing to bring I think this could work attitude to the table, then, I mean, personally, I would say move along to the next thing.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, it's like those parallels are so apt there, but it's like you in your coaching business, right? If you can identify that at the beginning, like, it's not even worth trying to get to the levels of systems accountability if that person doesn't core see that, like how they operate in the world, right? And again, brands are no different when it comes to stuff, companies, right? Starts with that, again, like the corny analogy, the fitness piece, but like I used to work out like 5 or 6 p.m. I was always tired. And I'm like, oh, so it's like you're just kind of like, happy energy left. So part of those changes, like, okay, well, I now have to identify somebody that puts the workout first thing in the day. That was a big change. So the rest of the stuff is like, it's kind of like, it wasn't as important because I needed that core piece there first, right? And so if a brand, right, wants to do some of this stuff, like, you need to start with that way. Like, I see that, honestly, as extreme, I'll say even this is what I learned back when I had the pleasure of leading social for Crocs shoes, was like revenue and sales don't matter. Like at a very extreme level, they do not matter, at least in the marketing function. You are there to start relationships, to spark conversation, to get attention. That's what you're there to do. So your identity has to be in there. And there's a lot of times I would be at heads with e-commerce team because they're like, oh, we have this sale today, you have to announce it. And I would say, no, this is not going on our organic social channels, right? So you had to have that identity of what the brand is and who your customer is and what they want to see from you that day. And if that identity wasn't there, it's a lot easier to go, okay, well, sure, why not, right? Who cares? It's just a social post. So I think kind of breaks down if you don't start from that kind of core piece of it. And again, it sounds like so ethereal and like simple and philosophical, but a lot of this stuff really at the end of the day, it is, again, it's how you socially interact. It's how you become just, a good influential person in the world. No different for a brand. We just have so much baggage of how we are supposed to think and operate as marketers, unfortunately, that kind of just gets in the way of this.
Yeah. Well, and I always think that people forget that their like own personal experience is information. And so like when you think about the people you have the most meaningful relationships with and the brands that you have the most meaningful relationship with, is that because they had a sale? Usually not, right? Like I would say that most of us have like more meaningful relationship brands where our purchasing habits are not based on a sale or a discount. And yet still so heavily in sales and marketing, people are like, put it on sale. Let's do a free trial. Let's this. And you're like, the activities are perceived, and we know because we perceive them from other companies this way, as trying to convince us, right? Like, you can't possibly understand all the value with this, so I'm going to give it to you at a discount. Like that, all that shows me is that like you've overestimated the value, and if you put it on sale, then maybe we have value alignment. Right? Like there's no like meaningful relationship there, right? And even when you think about, because I hear a lot of people talk about like my husband works for a grocery store chain, right? So like we all know the products they put in the checkout lines, right? Chocolate bars, gum, chips, right? Like the easy grab and goes, because I don't think that hard about that stuff, right? So like if it happens to be there, then you're like, oh, gum is 50% off? Sure, I'll buy some gum, right? But like, it's not like you have a relationship with your gum brand. And for a like consumer product like that, you probably don't need a substantial relationship with your product. But when we're talking about, especially when we're talking about B2B and things that are like higher ticket types of things, or coaching, consulting, these types of things, right? Like, you guys, you want to buy the brain surgery that's on sale? Because I don't want to buy the brain surgery that's on sale. Like I want full price brain surgery, because then I think that that's good brain surgery. Right? So I think it's always interesting to me, this like push and pull to and from marketing and sales on the promotional side of it. And like we all know those brands where you're like, like all they do is sales, right? All their TV ads are sales, and all of these, they got a sale every weekend, right? Like, which means I don't have to go to this sale because there'll be another sale, right? Like, so all of a sudden there's no urgency, and it's meant to create urgency, and so it doesn't do at all what it was supposed to do. But again, like, I feel like, let's talk about this for a moment, is like, where is the space for that conversation? Right? Where like a marketing team could come back and be like, well, we keep doing these promos because this is what you keep telling me to do. And we're good teammates. So we have been doing this. We've been doing this, but we have also been collecting the data on this. And our data says that these sales have, maybe there's a little bit of impact. Maybe there's like speed, or maybe like everybody buys on a Saturday instead of like throughout the week. But like, other than that, it's not really drills. So maybe we could try something else. I don't know. Yeah, I feel like there's opportunities in there, but
agreed. And I think maybe too much discount brain surgery is why we get crazy, stupid marketing in the first place. I think about it. But yeah, to your point, absolutely. I mean, there's a time and a place for like promotions and sales and talking about your product. Absolutely, even as a social first brand. And there's an art and science, and I go way into this in the book and nerd out on it. But again, customers still, again, your loyal fans, like they're gonna want to know that, right? Like, so there's a time and a place of how you can kind of work that into your messaging. Again, hopefully it's not just grab a Canva template and say 50% off today, right? Put a little more thought and effort into it, hopefully. But yeah, absolutely, there's a time and a place of how you can work that stuff in there while still being social first. We are ultimately here as businesses to, find new customers, to grow, et cetera. And so again, it's not that stuff needs to go away, but absolutely to your point, it's like, how do we just think through that a little bit differently than how we maybe traditionally would as marketers?
Yeah. And I want to, as we wrap up the conversation, just Jay has a really great comment here about how marketing on social media was once guerrilla marketing. It now transitioned to digital marketing, and now it's just marketing, just kind of that broadcast media. And I think this is an interesting thing for people to, I mean, the progression is interesting, yes, but also it is capable of being all of those things. Okay? A lot of media channels are capable of being multiple things. And I think a lot of times we get blinders on and thinking like social media does this and TV does this and lawn signs do this. And like, but there's a lot of, I keep on coming back to space. There's a lot of space in there to just like explore, right? And if we want to do business this way, whatever this way is, ABC way, and like, how might I do that on social? How might I do that in my community? How might I do that with my competitors? How might I do that on TV? How might I do that in blah, blah, blah? And there's a lot of possibilities, which to me always, there's a lot of opportunities for experimentation. I always think when people think there's too many opportunities, then they don't know what to do. But like, if you come and listen to shows like this, where there's like new ideas thrown out, and then you're like, oh, this one makes sense to me. How could I test that? Right? How could I dip my toe into being a social first brand? Oh, let me try this. And just see, right? I think maybe we got a little overly obsessed as marketers with like, everything is measured, and so we have to go for perfection. Like marketing was never about this, right? Like marketing has always been like a customer research function, right? Like we can't read minds. We still can't read minds, folks, which means we need to like go talk to people. We need to make some hypotheses. We're going to get some of them right, and we're going to get some of them wrong. And like, this is just what it looks like to be a marketer. And if we've gotten to the point where we're not doing anything different, just like doing the same thing, running the same program, like consistently, I think it's more risky. The risk is increased in our drive for certainty instead of being able to embrace that like a certain percentage of this is always going to be uncertain. Here's how we deal with the uncertainty. Here's how we harness the uncertainty, and let's go get it, instead of being like, let's make this certain, and we'll know that every time we send an email, then we're going to get 2 leads, and then 2 leads is going to turn into 1. It's like, you guys, like none of this math is real. Because it's too unpredictable. The customer is too unpredictable. We're unpredictable as consumers. And again, like we can see that in our own consumer behavior, and yet somehow we go to work and we're like, no, our customers are totally predictable. Okay, well, good luck with that. I have a 7-year-old that there's like no predictability whatsoever. Every time I think there's predictability, I'm wrong.
That's a good lesson to learn from a 7-year-old, and just in life in general. And absolutely, I mean, I think it's Roger Martin, and maybe Seth Godin's also written on this too. But this idea of like, if you have certainty, it's not a strategy. That's a plan, right? Plans are easy. You go, you run it, and you get the direct outcome. It requires a lot of uncertainty and risk and unknowns. If you don't have that, then like, you don't have a strategy. I love that. I constantly preach that to clients too. It's still the best playground for it. And that will change and evolve over time. There'll be something else in the future. But right now, that's social. And if you don't go into that lens of being able to recognize this is not good, our strategy today is definitely going to change. But it's a platform change, culture is going to change. All of this stuff is always going to shift. So you're following the consumer, you're following culture at large, and there's always going to be uncertainty in that. None of us knows what tomorrow is going to bring. And as we go through this kind of, social acceleration in the world right now, things are happening faster and quicker. So like the game is, it's fun, it's exciting. There's a lot of like stress that comes with that too, certainly. But you have to, again, it goes back to a very human thing to learn, which is how do you get comfortable with uncertainty? And so again, most of the stuff we can learn, I would say, comes back to just like larger philosophies on life that we can then take into our brands, we can take into our companies we work for. And again, I think that's a great point though, that separation of like the known piece of it. And then, to Jay's question there too, or comment, I guess, which is like, yes, that social shifted more into that. Like it is just marketing today, right? How do we continue to get more into a little bit of that, like the old school guerrilla roots of it, right? Do things that are going to be a little bit riskier. Don't have to be like unhinged or unethical about things, right? And some brands do that just for cheap attention, but like there are plenty of ways to be a little bit more about it, to be a little bit more unpredictable. And I think that's really the big challenge for people. If you want to stand out today, be truly social first. Find your way of doing that. It connects to your consumer, your audience is, to hear from you on.
Yeah. Well, I think just this is making me think of just again like the activity of being social, right? Like if I'm going to go, and it's one of the things I love about these shows, right? Like I'm going to go and I'm going to ask a question and I have no idea what you're going to say. So that means I have no idea where the conversation is going next. And I have no idea what the audience is going to say. And sometimes it's like game changing to the direction of the conversation. And sometimes it's like fully in alignment. And sometimes people are just chatting, right? But like none of this is predictable. One of the things, actually, one of the like greatest things I heard was I'm going to forget his name, but the current CEO at Cirque du Soleil. And he was talking about the difference between like performance acrobatics, which is what they do, and performance sports, which is that they don't have to respond to something they don't fully control, right? I mean, if you're interacting with other members of the show, then yes, you don't control the other members of the show. But if you're a solo act, you go, you do your things, you have your ability, right? Like you do what you do. And in professional sports, like you might have a game plan, but anybody who's played knows that like, well, it's like, oh my gosh, I was coaching baseball last summer and we had like 70-kilometer-an-hour winds or something ridiculous. And so like, okay, none of us have ever played where you have to like try to pitch between gusts of wind, right? Like nobody can predict that. It like doesn't matter how much practice you do. I'm not going to get a wind machine and blow dirt at girls who are practicing pitching, right? Like this is no, there was no certainty associated with that. And both teams are dealing with the same thing, right? Like nobody knows how to deal with this. Who adjusts best? Whoever adjusts best wins the game. And so it's not about having that like perfect game plan that can get you to no uncertainty. It's about who adjusts best. And honestly, I think the people who are more capable from a being social point of view adjust better. So maybe you guys, I mean, I feel like most of the people in this chat are like also those types of people. But I think there's big opportunities for people to lean into these types of methodologies in this current environment where like adaptability becomes very important and it becomes a competitive advantage. So you can have that one as a competitive advantage. Or if you want to keep going for certainty, I'm sorry you wasted your time with this episode. But there's maybe some things you want to try. With that being said, Tom, is there any last wrapping up things or big final takeaways that you would like to share with the audience before we're done for today?
Honestly, just very quickly, which is like, try to go fail. It sounds silly saying it, but like, just kind of put a bow on all the experimentation, the uncertainty of it all. Again, too many people try to get it perfect and overthink stuff. Like social should be fun. I think we lost sight of that the last few years. I know. The world got crazy and there's all this like tense and anger everywhere, but there's a small signal out there. Go back to just people, consumers, audiences wanting some levity and just like a little bit how social used to be years and years ago. So yeah, bring some of that humanity back in there. Don't be afraid to fail. Go try new things, right? Maybe set a goal for yourself to fail 1 out of every 4 posts, whatever it is. You have a 20% failure barrier. We just need a little bit more risk takers and mavericks out there right now. The world needs it. Brands certainly need it. Things just are getting stale and old. So please go rock the boat and try some new stuff.
Oh, I could not have said it better myself. Tom, thank you so much. This was like such a wonderful conversation. And thank you to everybody who was in the chat. There's so many of you, Gary and Leslie and Meryl and Leanna and Jay and Robert and Islam and Dan and Lisa. And if I missed anybody, I really apologize about that. But you guys were awesome in the chat today. Thank you so much for coming and participating in the Social First conversation. And also, as I say with every episode, if this is something that is attracting you right now, that seems like it makes sense, don't let this be the last conversation you participate in on that topic. Let it be the first of many conversations. Connect with Tom, connect with me, connect with each other. Stay in the conversation about what it looks like for brands to be, like what Gary is saying, keep it real, keep it fun, and keep it. Like this is what we gotta do. And I'm just a big believer in that. If it's not fun, then what are you doing? Awesome. Thank you everybody for joining us today, especially you, Tom. Thank you for all the golden nuggets. And until next time, everybody, permission to do you.